hello, and welcome to Genealogy Adventures. Was it me this week or
It's
you?
fine. It's all good. It's all good.
Okay,
And this is my lovely cousin, Danya.
yes, and my handsome cousin Brian.
Thank you. Welcome to the show. Hope you guys are all having a really, really good Sunday.
Yeah, because this weather is crazy.
It
DC
is.
is hot. It's 80 degrees outside. Mind you, it was storming this morning. It was crazy. So, yeah, I don't know.
If anyone had told me I'd be wearing shorts and November is only a week away, I wouldn't have believed them.
Yes, I swear, I swear.
So today, we're going to be talking about genealogists and family historians as public historians. And just so that we're all on the same page, I'm just going to read a bit of a definition. So, definition of public historian, this is coming from Dr. Thomas Colvin, who teaches at Louisiana University. So, his definition is public history is the use of historical skills and methods outside of traditional academic realm of history. Public historians use their training to meet the needs of the community, the public, whether that community is defined as a city, a neighborhood, a business, or a historical society. It is an audience that differentiates the public historian's work. So, for instance, a public historian's audience might be a client, a government agency, tourism board, or historians. So basically, different audiences often require the public historian to employ unconventional skills. I think we've got that covered. Answer difficult questions and respond to unique situations.
Okay, so with that being said, today's topic is why we don't have a seat at the table, basically, and why we should have a seat at the table. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So, with that being said, we want to give you guys the opportunity to. This is a good time for our, especially our genealogists, our genealogical followers, to log in to really chime in because your voice needs to be heard. And there's so many different things that are going on today, public, as far as politics are concerned, everything that's going on with the state of just the world, the climate of the world right now, the things that are happening. We have a voice in that. We can say something about it because of the fact that we've already researched it and seen it happen or read about it happening. And these are the things that are not in our history books today. These are the things that should be there in order for people to know, well, you know what, this is really going on. So,
Well, Tonia McCoy, hi, by the way, Ashley, and hi, Tonia. Tonia has actually raised a really good point. She's like, if you don't have a seat at the table, create your own table.
but sometimes you can't create that table. I mean, I'm so into that. But how do you create a table when people are pushing you away constantly? You know what I'm saying?
Write it, publish it.
That's true. That's true. But then you got to get that out there to people. And then you got people that don't want to buy it or, they're thinking you're charging too much money for it. I mean, let's just be serious. For Black people, getting us to support each other can sometimes be very difficult. I think I said that nicely, right?
Yeah, you did. You did.
Yeah. So I mean, it's difficult.
But one thing I would counteract with is it doesn't necessarily have to have a charge. Like Genealogy Adventures, people can go to our website.
Right.
They can read all the stuff that we've written, and in a lot of ways, that is public history that we're sharing.
Yes, it is.
And again, it's not to have a swipe at historians. Historians serve a very important function. This is basically talking about adding non-traditional voices to those historical conversations. And I think I was saying to you yesterday, the way that I kind of think about it is historians look at the entire forest and they may concentrate on certain groves of trees, whereas we're doing it the other way. We're looking at the individual trees, the little groves of trees. We're trying to place them into that forest context.
Mm-hmm.
But our focus is really on individual people or even family groups or communities.
But it's not just the individual people, family groups, communities. We also focus on what's going on around.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a good segue into the difference between the family historian and, well, you taught me differently that the genealogist was something, but that's a good segue into that. So when you talk about, in my opinion, when you talk about a family historian is the person that can give you everything about the family. So they're going to be able to tell, oh, your great great grandmother from such was from such and such, or your father was this person, and so on, and this is what he did, and so on and so forth. Whereas a genealogist will be able to give some economical background. That's, or be able to say, well, when they were living in 1865, this is what was going on at that time, and how they were able to live, and this is what, their sharecropping and how much they sold, and so on and so forth. So when you're looking at those two things, you start to realize or figure out what it is you are. Because I had to figure that out for myself. At one point, I was a family historian, but as I go further and deeper into my family research, my family history, I've now become a genealogist. I'm on that genealogical route. So not only do I know my family's history, but I also know what was going on during that time, what battles they had to fight, what things they had to go through, what moments in time in history that they were there to witness.
But again, as a genealogist as well, we're looked as genealogists tend to look at lineal descent.
Right.
So who begat who begat who begat
Right.
who begat. So yeah, kind of in our working practice, we're just flipping hats all the time. So we're going from being a straightforward genealogist trying to figure out who our ancestors are, to then wearing our family history hat and actually filling in the gaps and telling their stories.
Exactly. So
So for those of you, so we're actually broadcasting in two different places. So our Facebook Live feed is up. So so you can either watch us on listenvisionlive.com, go to the WLVS tab to catch us there. Or if you want to leave a comment, because we really want to get you guys involved in this conversation too, go to our Facebook Live page, which is facebook.com/Genealogy Adventures USA. And you'll be able to pick up our video there. See a couple of people leaving messages already. Hi, Tiffany. Thank you for joining us. And do you want to answer Tony, or shall
what did she say? Okay, so Tony says, right and right. Drive around in your trunk with it if you have to. I know that's right. She says, we have to create what we want to see. You both are visionaries. You have created this platform for us. We support you on this level. You can do it. Oh, that's so sweet.
That's sweet.
Y'all know I'm sentimental. Don't be doing stuff like that. I play hard person, but I'm really not.
So a couple of examples that I wanted to give you of public history that's been shared that I found really meaningful is George Takei. I was aware that Japanese Americans had been interred in camps during World War II. What I didn't realize until he had actually written and publicly shared his family history was that his family lost everything. They lost their house, they lost their money, and that was one of the reasons why they got reparations. I didn't know that. I mean, like I said, I knew that they were interred, but I just assumed that when they were let go, that whatever the government took,
right,
it gave it back to them.
Right.
It didn't. So again, and I'm sure that there's books that have been written about it, but because I'm a big fan of George Takei, anything he's going to write, I'm going to read. And I did. I learned something new. My Native American ancestry. I mean, there's just so many people that are writing about Native American history, their history, including Tiffany Huntsman, who's joined us today.
Yes.
So, for instance, I've discovered a lot about the Lumbee Indians in North Carolina,
right,
who I'm not directly related to, but are like cousin lines. But anyway, I just really appreciated finding out about what that community was like, what their triumphs were, what barriers they had to overcome, in their success stories. And, to come to find out that they have a really rich, of course they have a rich history. But it was really great getting that context from a very kind of family history, public historian kind of viewpoint. And as well, people who were writing about, again, extended family members of mine who were poor, they were Irish or they were Scottish. And, I always wondered why they went to the mountains, like Virginia and North Carolina. Come to find out, they didn't like the British. They didn't like the English. They wanted to get as far away from the English as humanly possible.
Wow.
But as those people as their descendants, write those stories and share those histories, I'm just finding out so much more.
So, okay, well, then with that being said, the stuff that you found out, the things that you know, how does it impact you, and how do you think that as a family historian slash genealogist, how do you think that it would impact in other, like what would it help for other people to know about it? That makes sense what I'm trying to ask
If I think I've got it, I would say actually it explains a lot today about the Appalachians, about they have always had to be self-sufficient. They had no one else to rely on them. And even when government did start to appear in the form of established church, not well, in terms of schools and administrative buildings, there's still this kind of real dogged kind of self-determination. No one can tell us what to do.
you.
Historically, kind of, we're a forgotten people. Um, so it's made me kind of understand and appreciate that resilience a little bit more.
Okay.
And even when I'm hearing stories on the news today about that part of the world, because I've been reading other people's books or going to their websites or reading their blogs, I'm just getting such a real profound kind of understanding about that whole culture.
Okay. All right. So then the other thing that we wanted to discuss, um, this is going to be a great thing. I'm just going to go straight to it. So, as you guys know, certain things is never placed in history books. And as an Uber driver, and for those that follow me on my page, I actually wrote about me being an Uber driver one time and whatever, and things that I come across. But this particular thing, as an Uber driver, I would pick up different people all the time. And the first thing if you're a rider, you get in the car, and the first thing you ask the Uber driver, is this the only thing you do? You know, you say, or is this something that you like? This is, you're feeling this, what have you? And you'll say yes, and or no, this isn't the only thing that I do. And they say, oh, what else do you do? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm a genealogist. And they're like, really, what's a genealogist? And then I go in and I explain to them, and they're like, oh, that's amazing. What have you found? And I'll tell them the things that I found. And most times I would tell them the story of my great great grandmother Martha, because I find her to, not that she's more important than anybody else, but she was the first person that I found who was enslaved, and she probably went through everything. So and I would tell them that I was told that because of the price that she was when she was sold, which was like $12.50, she was considered a prime breeding woman. So I would get this crazy look in my rearview mirror, and they're like, breeding? What do you mean breeding? They literally did not know that breeding existed. So I don't know how many of you guys know that breeding actually exists. It exists. And I'm getting ready to read from an Edgefield planter, and his world, the 1840s journals of Whitfield Brooks. So this is his writing. This is what he wrote. I need you to understand that. Okay. It says, to cultivate the crop of 1884, the overseer has 20 young fellows, 10 young women, all of whom are breeders, and 4 now pregnant, 5 boys and 5 girls, in all 40 hands, equal to 33 taskable hands. Do I need to say that again? Because
Maybe once more for the people in the back.
just for the people in the back.
For the
Okay.
people in the back.
I'm just going to do the first sentence then. To cultivate the crop of 1845, the overseer has 20 young fellows, 10 young women, all of whom are breeders, and 4 now pregnant. So, for those that don't think that breeding did not exist, he just wrote it. He wrote it in 1840. It did exist. It was real. They were actually taking our ancestors, our grandmothers, our great great grandmothers, and they were making them have babies to sell. This is a real thing. This is something that was never entered in any history book. I had grown men in the back of my car crying, apologizing to me because they were like, I never knew this existed. So, with that being said, these are histories that need to be placed in books. These are things, this is where we have to try to push this information. But Tanya said push it. How do I push it? Because that's a horrific thing. That is totally horrific. So how do I push that? How do I give myself some type of platform where I can say, hey, this happened to my great grandmother, and now I can show proof from an actual enslaver, the man who enslaved her. Now I have proof. So with that being said, how do I do that? What types of things would you do to do that? I mean, I wrote a book about it.
But you're missing out one little detail that actually gives us so much more depth. He was Martha's relative.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot.
You forgot that.
Yeah, this is my 3 times great grandfather, y'all. Yeah.
So it's a matter of not only that Martha was a breeder, but Martha was his blood.
His blood
He was
relative.
he was breeding. He was
He was-
breeding his.
He
blood
was
relative.
breeding his grandchildren. He was selling his grandchildren. He was breeding his daughter, selling his grandchildren. So, how do you deal with that? How do I don't know how I don't know how to share that. And this information that really needs to be shared, is stuff that people really need to talk about.
In a current environment where where you would be called racist.
Right. Because if I bring this up, I'm being racist when I bring this up. But you just told me the story in the car on the way here about someone who flipped the script where they showed a black person as the enslaver and the white person as the enslaved, and then they called it racist. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's what it is. Why is it racist then but not racist now? This is the conversation that we're trying to have. This is what we want to open up, and we want to get people out, because I'm tired of today. I'm not even gonna lie to y'all. I'm tired. I'm so sick of today. So I'm just so thankful for Brian for figuring out a way for us to have this conversation, because I'm telling y'all, I'm a bit tired.
Oh, the name of the book, and this is for Grace, is called An Edgefield Planter and His World, the 1840s Journal of Whitfield Brooks. After the show, we'll try to take a quick picture of it, and we'll post it in the comments section.
Yeah, we'll even post a link for it, because it's awesome. It's an awesome book.
It's written by a gentleman called James O for Orange Farmer Jr.
Yeah.
So that's James O. Farmer Jr. Because again, my ancestry is the flip side of yours. You have a female breeder, I have a male breeder.
Right.
My 4 times great grandfather, Lewis Matthews, 9 different women so far, and about 36 kids that and we know that that's not all of them. And I've shared my kind of findings on the Genealogy Adventures website, and I've taken some heat for that. Breeding never existed, didn't happen. And I'm like, Lewis's own white enslaving father referred to him as
a breeding man. Exactly. I mean, one of our beloved genealogists who have passed on, Gail Bush, she actually wrote in their book, the name of the book just went out of my head.
It's gone out of mine too.
I'm sorry, Nathan. Okay, so we're gonna post the name of that book on the comments. But she wrote in that book how she learned from one of the Burton books that her ancestors were breeders. Said the same thing. These are prime breeding women. And so, you gotta, this is true stuff. This is real stuff. And nobody's playing with it,
But again, the good thing about being a public historian and writing about chapters of history that people don't really want to revisit is if you do get pushback, because again, when I got pushback about Lewis, I had Drury Cook Matthews' words. Lewis was a breeder. And I just took, with my little mobile phone, I just took a snap of the document.
Yeah, this is a picture now.
Post it, and it's like, what part of this is fabricated? And then this is the other conversation I want to get into about public historians and genealogy. We get accused of being revisionists. Oh, well, you're just revising history.
Right.
How can you, when you have an original document in front of you.
That's not
and
a
that
revision.
person's words.
It's not a revision.
It's not revision.
It's not a revision. Like there's no way. This is not a revision. These are his exact words. This man literally put in here the journals of Whitfield Brooks. The only things that he started to take out was because one of the things that the South Carolinian enslavers or planters, what they were doing was they would always mark the weather. So the first 2 months, he did it with word for word. But then after that, he just took out the weather. You didn't know about the weather, but you knew the other things that was going on. And he stated in here that that's what he was doing. That's why this book is just, this is an amazing, I was not expecting this book to be like this. I'm not kidding. I wasn't expecting it. And Catherine responded to what you said. She was like, it's a correction.
Well, Catherine, I was going to mention you next, actually.
Go ahead, we'll mention Catherine.
Because again, Catherine, who has been on the show previously, she's written an amazing book called Unveiled, which is about the 1619, 1620 Africans who arrived in Virginia. She's taken huge heat for what she's written because there is this argument. I want to say it's semantics, but it's not really semantics. But there is an argument about what class of people those first Africans who arrived in Virginia were. There were people who said that they're slaves, which they weren't. They would have been slaves if their voyage had continued to Mexico, but it didn't. They got intercepted by the British,
Right.
And they were taken everywhere, but they eventually ended up in Virginia. That's fact. The fact is they were servants of some description. Now, were they indentured servants or were they servants? That probably needs a lot more research and investigation.
Mm-hmm.
But it's pretty clear that they're not slaves.
Right.
But you have historians who are part of an organization I'm not going to name because I really don't want to get into that on Twitter today.
Of course.
Who will stand in front of conferences, who will speak at conferences and say these people were slaves. And it's like, why are you perpetuating the same old story? Which brings us to a point that we wanted to talk about.
Right.
Is I think public historians are really important for marginalized people. So I don't care if your ancestors were poor whites living in the back of beyond, if they were pioneers, settlers, Black, Hispanic, whatever you were. If you come from a marginalized community, or if your ancestors did, I think that those are the really powerful stories.
Yes.
Because a lot has been written about the great and the good, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I find it really fascinating reading about my ancestors who were, but the ones that really move me are the ones who were poor, or enslaved, or free people of
or the
color,
things
or
that,
Native Americans,
right?
or whatever.
Because you learn what they've gone through and their struggles and how they continue to still move on through all of those different things. So, which takes us into the Devil's Football.
It does indeed. So Donnie and I have been having many discussions over the last couple of weeks, tying what we know from our ancestry and our family histories to kind of what's going on today. So we've talked a little bit about breeding. What really kind of highlighted the show for me today was two TV series. One is called American Gods, where they had a very, very powerful opening segment where you had I still can't remember the actor's name. Really famous actor portraying an ancient African god on a slave ship.
He was the 7-Up guy.
Yeah, I wish I could remember his name.
I can't think of his name, and I was supposed to pull it up. Okay, go ahead.
But honestly, it was one of the most powerful kind of TV speeches from a Black character that I think I'd ever heard.
Ever.
And it was 2 minutes. It wasn't any longer than that. But it was things like when he was speaking to them, he's like, y'all don't even know that you're Black. He's like, and that's the nice name they're going to call you when you actually get over to America. That's the land of milk and honey, but not for you. It's powerful.
It is extreme. You can look it up on YouTube.
And then
we don't want to put anything out there because we don't want to be sued later on.
I don't want to be sued.
Right, we don't want to be sued, but just go on and we could talk about it. It's American Gods. Look up American Gods 2 on YouTube, and I'm trying to find the guy's name.
And the other show that was again made this show today very, very topical was the Tulsa riots of 1921, which was the opening sequence for The Watchmen, which is a new show on
HBO.
Powerful, powerful, powerful opening sequence. And what really amazed me was that so many people had never ever heard of the Tulsa riots, never heard of it. But that's getting a little ahead of ourselves. I want to. There's like the Devil's Punch Bowl. There's
It's just all of these things that we're talking about is, I guess, taking us into the differences between what is a riot and what is a massacre too.
yes.
So,
But the Devil's Punch Bowl basically happened in Natchez, Mississippi, around 1865, where no one really knows how many, but approximately 20,000 newly freed slaves were corralled in this place called the Devil's Punch Bowl, where thousands and thousands and thousands of people died. Um, and that really hasn't been covered as much as it ought to be. How long did we try spending last night just to find the year that it actually happened?
I think it was like about 30 to 45 minutes just to find that, but it took forever. It shouldn't. And that's just the bottom line. It shouldn't take forever to learn those different things. Now, we're not saying that none of this stuff is being taught in history classes. They may be taught in higher education. They may go into it through those types of things. But I am wondering if it is harped upon like Gettysburg and winning in Gettysburg, or the boat of George Washington and his people going across the which river was that?
Potomac.
The Potomac. Yeah. These things are pushed in our heads. They're pushed. Those kind of things are pushed in our heads. Why aren't we learning about this other stuff? Why aren't we learning the good and the bad?
Well, I think the thing that frustrates me is, and I can only go by my own high school experience, we kept learning about the same history over and over and over again every single year. But when it came to really horrible things that happened to marginalized people, nothing really.
Right.
The only thing that I think we even remotely touched upon was attacks by Native Americans on colonials.
Right. And I'm not saying that they didn't talk about bad things, because let's just be clear. This is Preston Brooks's father, okay, you guys, and you guys know I talk about Preston all the time. But Preston was the one that beat Charles Sumner on the Senate floor. Now, we all know who Charles Sumner is. We know because of the beating. But you never knew the name of the man. They literally don't put the name of the man who did the beating. It is not there. It is not listed. They just said he was beat. I think they even said it was a South Carolinian senator, but that's about it. They didn't give his name. However, South Carolina raised this dude up like he was the God of all gods when he did what he did. So South Carolina people may know, oh, that was Preston Brooks, but they did it because they know, because they're proud. They were proud of what he did at that time.
And Virginians.
And
because I
Virginians.
actually came across this crazy story, because he beat Charles Sumner so bad.
He broke his cane.
He broke his cane.
You know, I know.
And the Virginians did like this huge collection. I think they bought in something like, was it 30 or 40 canes?
It wasn't just Virginians, South Carolinians. People, and Joe, because I think there's a place in Louisiana, it's either Georgia or Louisiana, that's named Brooks. And it's named after him. I'm not sure if it was Georgia or Louisiana. But yeah, so the South may know his name, but the North did not. I've been in the North all my life, and I've seen the pictures of the man standing over Charles Sumner being beat. But how do you think I felt when I was doing my research and my great-great-grandmother kept pushing me because I learned his name as I was doing my research on her. And then she was like, oh, look him up. Look up Preston Brooks. Well, Whitfield was the first person that owned her. Lemuel was the last person. Why you want me to go to the middle? Look up Preston Brooks. So I just typed in Preston Brooks, and here is that famous caricature of a man standing over another man with a cane, swinging, just dropping this cane on this man's head, and two other senators standing behind of him, one with a gun like this, telling them, no, they got to fight. Mind you, that's Lawrence Key.
Mhm.
That's the Virginia senator.
Yeah.
So this is why this is going on.
And bear in mind, this happened on the Senate floor, not the Congress
Senate floor.
Senate, the United States Senate floor.
That's right.
So guns drawn and people people beating each other.
Right. It's
So-
just it was the craziest thing.
But again, I think what both of us were also chatting about last night is just how much we've learned by people who are public historians in writing about this. We wanted to talk a little bit about voter suppression.
Yes.
I get the sense that people are acting like voter suppression for, again, marginalized people is some sort of a new phenomenon. And there were just a couple that we actually wanted to go over, because a lot of them aren't really discussed as much as they should be. So in terms of South Carolina, there are two. There's the Phoenix riot and the Parksville riot, and correct me if I'm wrong. South Carolina acknowledges the Phoenix riot, but does not want to discuss the Parkville riot.
It's like it never happened.
And the first, the Phoenix riot happened in
1898.
1898, and Parksville was
1884.
1884.
And you gotta be careful with the Parksville one, because they were lying from the beginning. If you have my book, you've read it, but they were lying from the beginning about the Parksville riot, because it was my ancestor, that one of my grandfather's cousins that was a part of it. So he was being blamed for killing a guy, and they had to get him, and they felt like the statute of limitations was running out. So they changed the date from 1884 to 1886. Then they turned around and said, no, it was 1885. And it was just, finally, it came out that it happened in 1884. So that particular one, that's just like the Devil's Punch Bowl. When did it happen? You know, I hear about it, but when did it happen? So differences: riot, massacre. A riot is something when you have people who are fighting against something.
Well, I was going to read.
You're going to read the definition.
I'm going to read the definition.
Okay.
So one of the things I'm going to be writing about as a public historian is the difference between a riot and a massacre. Because again, what we were talking about last night, I always have the feeling that when groups of people of color are involved in a situation, it is always called a riot.
Always.
So I'm going to read this definition, and then we're going to revisit some of these voter suppression, what are called riots, but I'm actually calling them massacres. So the definition of a riot. A riot is a form of civil disobedience commonly characterized by a group lashing out in a violent public disturbance against authority, property, or people. Riots typically involve theft, vandalism, and destruction of property, public or private. So bear that in mind. A massacre is the intentional killing of a considerable number of people under circumstances of atrocity or cruelty, or contrary to the norms of a civilized people.
Right.
So in my opinion, Tulsa was not a riot.
It was not a riot. It was a massacre. It was a massacre. Now, let's look at Parksville. Parksville was started because of a group of white men harassing Black people. But according to the writings of it, it was the opposite. It was switched up.
Well, to cut along, I guess to
shorten it.
To shorten it. So I can't, again, you're talking about the Parksville?
Parksville.
Okay,
this is John Yeldale.
So that's 1884. It was
Right.
coming up to an election.
Right.
These were, again, still fairly newly freed people. They were keen, the men were keen to vote, because remember, the women couldn't vote back then.
And this is all about voter suppression. They were trying to stop that. And
so they were, they went into town. They went to register to vote because Mr. Talbert was, I think he was running for office, actually, but Mr. Talbert.
I don't think it was Talbert. It was another guy.
It's Talbert.
Talbert. It was Talbert. You sure? Okay.
So basically, he got a lot of black people to go and register to vote. And to say that they were met with stiff resistance and opposition is an understatement. And the reason that was given for the violence over the next 3 or 4 days that followed was that a Black person pulled out a gun and started firing, which was not
true.
case.
It was not true. There was no gun to be had. I mean, there was a gun. There was a gun, but it wasn't pulled out. John was the one, which was my grandfather's cousin. He was the one that had the gun. And then after he had the gun, he was like, "Yeah, I got one. I'm here to protect myself." And they looked at him like, "Okay." He leaves, and then they send this whole posse after him. So is that a riot? Or is that a massacre? And they're going to shoot up these men that they felt like they needed to shoot up because they had a gun. Is it a riot or is it a massacre? Well, one thing led to another. One of the white men was killed, and John had to go and read the book if you want to know the rest, because it's a great story. But
But for days, they were, the law was literally riding out on horseback, shooting and hanging pretty much any
is
person
that
of color.
Phoenix?
That was both. It was both of them.
Okay.
Killing everyone that they could get their hands
That's true.
on.
That's true. Because John even stated that there were so many men that died in the river that were drowned. And I mean, when is it a riot and when is it a massacre? What was the Oklahoma bombings? Was that a massacre? Was that a riot? When people, what was the LA, what they called the LA riots? Was it a massacre or was it a riot? The LA riots was a riot. That was an actual riot. That's when all of this stuff, that's when they just went off because Rodney King was beat. And in some instances, I just found out that one of the reasons, it wasn't just because of Rodney King, it was because of this young girl that was shot and she was paying for her soda. And this is a part of what the riot was about. But that's a riot. Tulsa, those people were doing their thing. That was Black Wall Street. They were making their own money. They were living their own lives. And these people did not like it. And they went on that main street and they started killing people. Just literally just taking them out, dropping bombs. Philadelphia, dropped the bomb on Philadelphia. Why? For what? When was that? I think 1968.
1980s. That was like
1985.
That was it.
1985. A bomb was dropped in a neighborhood in Philadelphia. For what? It is. I need for people to honestly and truly wake up. I need you to see. Take the blinders off. Look at what's going on around you. Be mindful of it. If it's hurting you, then deal with it. If it's not hurting you, then you on the other team. And that's just how I see it. I have to bring myself down because I'll start saying stuff that I ain't got no business saying.
Well,
so.
I think what you were saying in the last bit is, even if you don't feel as though, or even if you don't have skin in the game, because that seems to be an American expression that I'm hearing all the time, you shouldn't close your eyes to it. If it goes against what a civilized society would say is wrong, you should step up.
You should step up and call it out. That's exactly it. So Catherine says Florida had I hope I'm saying this right, Okie massacre in 1920. 100 years ago, Black families were killed, homes burned, and they ran out of town. Their land stolen. All over the vote, definitely a massacre. But Catherine, was that called a massacre or was it called a riot? See, those are the things that we're trying to point out. Why is it that when Black people do something, it's considered a riot? Why is it that we can't celebrate? I went to Jackson State University, go Tigers. And if we won something huge or big or whatever, and we went out and did the same thing that people at University of Virginia did, and they flipping cars, turning things on, making things on fire. Oh, those are just boys will be boys. But if we went out and did the same thing at Jackson State, would we be just boys will be boys? Would we be thought of in that way? Or was it a riot?
Well, using another example, and this one's the Native American one. I want to get the year right. I think it's 1622 when the Native Americans attacked Henricus and Jamestown in Virginia, and is always classed as a massacre. The story, basically, whenever you read about it, the words go, the Native Americans massacred the European colonials. but it never worked the other way. And when I actually dug into that story, it's like, well, I kind of know a little bit about Pamunkey history. I know a little bit about them in terms of culture. I have a lot more to learn. I'm like, well, what would prompt them to just out of the blue
Right.
cross a river and just start slaughtering? Because I mean, I lost a lot of white European family members in that attack. Come to find out, it was a retaliation
It's,
because the colonials were starving. So the men got this bright idea. Well, under the cover of darkness, let's go.
and get some
Ra-
food.
let's. But they weren't even going to take. They weren't even going to take just enough to survive. They were going to clean them out. That was the Pamunkeys' winter store of food, so that they
Mm.
could survive. So, you can imagine someone rocking up into your kitchen, going through your cupboards, taking every bit of food
No,
you
I can't
have,
imagine none of
and you're just going to sit back and go, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to feel too upset about that. Go carry on, help yourself." So, if anything, again, reading these histories and wanting to share these histories, there is usually a reason for why the situation went down. Um, and I think we could just have a lot more contributions towards that end.
Right. And I think that this is something that we can share because in all you like he said, he had a lot of family that died during that thing. But if that family portion is kept out of the history, then it doesn't hold as much impact.
Yeah.
So maybe in history classes, and we need to start adding families into this. This is where we as genealogists can have that seat at the table. We can't keep sitting up in here and letting all this stuff just kind of go past, seeing these things, this history constantly repeating itself. Because I'm telling y'all, the 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 history of the Parksville riot is a repetitive thing. It's repetitive without the fighting. In so many words, it's repetitive without the fighting. That's it. It was straight voter suppression. That all of that was going on. Same thing with 1898 in the Phoenix. Now you know more about the Phoenix riot, but we had who Essex Harrison,
Mhm.
which was a possible. I think he was a grandfather, one of my grandfathers.
He was.
He was definitely one of my grandfathers. Somewhere back in the line, he was hung.
He was shot on the side of the road like a dog.
Oh, yeah. He knows more about that. I couldn't read that one,
Old man.
and he
He
was an
was
old man.
old man shot on the side of the street.
It doesn't make any sense. Like it just really just
Mm.
doesn't make any sense.
All for wanting to vote.
That's it.
So Donnie and I, we sing this loud and clear. There is a phrase that upsets us enormously. I am not my grandfather's Negro.
Mm,
It really upsets us because we know the price that was paid literally in blood for us to even have the right to vote.
yeah, yeah. I want to be I want to be them. If I could be like them, if I could be like them, and have you got to understand, if they were not who they were, we would not be where we are today. We would not be who we are today. So to come out and say I'm not that person. I mean, I get what you're saying. I understand the concept of it. I got my hood side. Okay. I got my hood side. I understand what you're saying. But our children today have to understand that they are about as close to what was going on during the civil rights movement as any generation outside of the civil rights generation. They are there. So they need to understand that they cannot just jump out there and start beating people up because you're the ones that's going to be grabbed, snatched, arrested, beat, shot, killed. Your moms are going to be upset. Your dads are going to be upset. It's you gotta take heed from those civil rights. One of my favorite videos is that tall, statuesque black man walking down the street, and he's being spit on, kicked, pushed. He got his hat, his suit on, everything, and he kept right on walking. He kept going. You got to be those people. Unfortunately, you have to be those people because now you have a different set of laws that are protecting you than they had. They didn't have the same. The reason why they did those things was so that you could have those laws. That's the thing. They did those things because you can have those laws. So now if somebody kick, push, spit on you, you have a law to back you up. He didn't have one, but he was strong enough to keep moving so that you would. So be that, be them. Don't not be them. That doesn't make any sense to me.
And Karen has asked a really good question. What do you think is the resistance to the existence of breeding? Why do you think people just don't believe breeding actually happens?
Because it's probably the most horrific thing in slavery that could have happened. And they already don't want to remember slavery as is. I mean, they don't want to talk about it. They don't, when you talk about think about it. Slavery and lynching is actually two separate things. So when they don't want to talk about lynching, it's no way they're going to get into the bowels of what slavery actually did. And that is one of the most horrific things. And I'm going to tell you why. Breeding is one of the most horrific things. So I'm going to tell you like this. My mother and one of our genealogists, the late Sheila Hightower, they were second cousins, third cousins, fourth cousins. Literally, y'all. Sheila has a breeding man. Again, I have a breeding woman. We have absolutely no idea where our black line connects. That's because as a breeding woman, once she has the child is taken and sold. So I have cousins out there that I have no idea who they are. And they don't know who we are. They don't even know who their mothers are. So Brian is related to me through Martha Brooks, but we're not sure how yet. He's related to me through Martha, but what if Brian and I were attracted to each other? This is my cousin. And it's because of Martha that he's my cousin. Well, one of the reasons. It's because of Martha that he's my cousin. So with that being said, I'm getting ready to have relations with my cousin, and I don't even know it because of the fact that her child was taken. This is why breeding is probably one of the most, if not the most horrific thing. And this is why they don't want to accept it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to know that it exists.
Because the other side of the same coin is, again, child that's a product of breeding doesn't know who he or she her parents are, so they don't have an identity. So now you fast forward a couple of generations, the Great Migration, a lot of just tons of people moving from the south to the north and the west and falling in love, getting married, having children. They could have very easily married their cousin completely by accident because they don't know.
That's what breeding did. That's all breeding. I don't care what nobody say. That's breeding, and that's the separation. That's the separation of families. That's what that did to us.
And I'm going to say, I think the other thing that people find really hard to accept is that there was a class of Americans, enslaving Americans, who classed human beings as a cash crop.
Mm-hmm.
Breeding, there were breeding plantations. That's all they did.
That's it.
Breed slaves. They didn't have a farm. They didn't raise tobacco, cotton, indigo, none of that.
Right.
They were basically creating human beings for sale.
So I have two things. So Karen said, Holocaust deniers irritate me to no end, just as do the folks ignoring slavery and breeding as our history. And that's true. Holocaust survivors go through the same thing. Yeah, they literally go through the exact same thing. And then Brandy Neal says they don't want to talk about it because it unveils the inhumanity of their ancestors and they identify with their ancestors. Okay, let me say this. And Brandy, you're right about that, but I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna tell y'all who I identify with. I identify with Preston Brooks. I'm gonna tell you why I identify with him. I identify with him because I see me in him. This man has said things that I have said to my own. It blew my mind to find out that I've actually said the exact same words to a person when they were trying me. He was being tried by Wigfall, and he told him, look, you in here, you writing this letter. This is in a newspaper. You're writing this letter, and you're doing it anonymously. My name is Preston Brooks, and I live here. You got a problem with me, you come and handle it. When I tell y'all, I right hand, this is my life, okay? Right hand to God. I said the exact same thing to somebody. You got a problem with me, this is where I live, come and handle it. That's who I am. Not to mention the fact that I also have so many family members who are into politics. Who's to say that it didn't come from them? So I actually identify, but just because I identify with him to a certain degree doesn't mean that I have to like what he did, how he did it, when he did it, or why he did it. So, we went through this show really fast.
We did. I was just going to, just because Kevin actually shared that his parents were distant cousins, and I was going to say, Kevin, if anyone had actually told me that my parents were distantly related in more than one way, I think I found 8 different ways that they were distantly related to each other, and all through slavery. Some they share common Black ancestors, but most of them are actually commonly shared white enslaving families.
Yeah.
Um,
And Catherine just made a huge statement. She said the child who is a product of breeding/trauma is passed down through DNA. Man, is that forever true. Post-traumatic slave disorder is real. It's a real thing. And if people don't know anything about it, look up epigenetics.
Yep.
Just look it up. Just look it up because it's a real thing. Epigenetics is a real thing. So I'm so glad we had this conversation. You just let me get so much off my chest today. Woo!
I try.
Gosh, I needed that. But yeah, so this show, we're gonna have another one like this. I think we should. I think because we have a lot of people we weren't able to read some of the comments. And I don't think I'm the only one that needed to get something off my chest. I think there were others that needed to do it as well. And we're gonna do another show. I don't know when. We'll let y'all know. But let's have another forum like this where everybody can just like really get it off. But the next forum, let's talk about how we can get this out here to the broader spectrum.
But what I would say is, if you're thinking about writing up your own family history, or even if you've started, I would encourage you to just make sure that you list all of your sources so people can see where you're getting your information from, because that's one of the first things that historians will challenge you on. So understand what's a really good source. Also citations. If you can take pictures of documents that you're using to write your stories, do that, put them in. Because we really don't want to give people any more ammunition than we have to. Hey, I load all of my writings usually with, most of my writings with sources, citations, and graphics.
Yeah.
And I still get challenged.
Yeah. And my book has every thing that I ever found. It is written down. And I've had so many people that actually said, my book was well sourced. That's because I don't want anybody coming back to me telling me that I was wrong.
Yeah. But again, it was like Catherine Knight's book about Unveiled. That whole Twitter storm that I inadvertently kind of dropped myself into. I kept saying, read the book, buy the book, look at the sources. I got so angry at one point. I'm flipping through Catherine's book, taking pictures of the citations and sources. Going, there.
Yeah. So thank you guys for coming in, for listening in. We've definitely, I don't know about you, but I needed it. And this is our blow off steam show. Yeah, somebody just said that. Karen, she said, yes, another show to blow off steam. So that's what we're going to call them from now on. It's going to be # blow off steam.
But hopefully, in this hour-long conversation that we've had, we've demonstrated why public historians are important.
Right.
And why, hopefully it's going to encourage people to kind of go out there and share what their discoveries.
Right. So thanks for coming in and checking us out today, you guys.
We'll be posting about the new next week's show on Monday.
Yes,
tomorrow.
Yes, we will. And just thank you for letting me vent.
I needed to vent a little bit on that one too, because I ain't gonna lie. That scene out of The Watchmen with the Tulsa.
Yeah, that blew my mind.
my eyes messed it up on that.
Yeah, that was
They
that
really
was a
did.
big thing. That was a big thing. So I'm Danya.
I'm Brian.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.